This episode is brought to you by Factor. Optimize your nutrition this year with Factor, America's #1 ready-to-eat meal service. Factor's fresh, never frozen meals are dietitian approved, ready to eat in just 2 minutes. Choose from 40 weekly options across 8 dietary preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, and Keto. Eat smarter at factormeals.com/listen50 and use code LISTEN50 for 50% off plus free shipping on your first box. Factormeals.com/listen50, code LISTEN50. T's and C's apply.
I think just understanding and realizing the power in those moments, that if you are consistent, if you do stick to your guns, so to speak, and you remain steadfast in the things that you said you're going to be about, then all of a sudden, what does that do? You gain credibility. It just increases that connection, I think, with your players, with your team, and with your whole unit.
Welcome to CultureOS, presented by Story of the Season, the series where we explore how elite coaches build programs by design, not by default. And if you're new to this series, we've got something special to help you catch up. A free ebook that highlights episodes from Season 1 featuring powerful insights from state championship coaches, a D3 national champion, the new head coach at Central Michigan, Matt Drinkall, and the head coach at South Florida, Alex Golish. Inside the book, you'll find how Matt Drinkall built culture through his coaching staff before the team ever took the field, how Kyle Ralph treats the offseason as the real foundation of Friday night success, how Brad Spencer leads a powerhouse by being relentlessly aligned with the program's mission, what Derek Leonard teaches about playing the long game and building for the future, and how Alex Golish leads with intentionality and humility in a high-stakes Division I role. Every coach featured shares practical systems, not slogans, that you can adapt to fit your program. Grab the free Season 1 ebook at coachandcoordinatornetwork.com/CultureOS. The link is also in the show notes. The series is made possible by Story of the Season, the platform that helps coaches raise money and build community by turning their season into a weekly interactive digital magazine. If you want to raise thousands and showcase your culture like the pros, download the free CultureOS ebook and learn how Story of the Season is helping coaches turn their programs into powerful stories that build buy-in and bring support.
Well, I am super excited, over the moon, to have our next guest on CultureOS. Coach J.J. Clark with the Dallas Cowboys now. I've had the privilege of knowing Coach for what seems like maybe 10 years now, and watching him move up through the ranks of the college game from a player at Wheaton College, which is local to my area, and then all the way up through the college game with Akron and then Indiana Wesleyan. I believe is when I met you, Coach, was when you were at Wesleyan. Then having the opportunity at Austin Peay, and then moving with Coach Walden over to UTEP as a defensive coordinator this past fall. And then now here you are with a star on your chest. You're with the Dallas Cowboys as an assistant defensive coach and linebackers assistant. And thank you for taking time out of your super busy schedule here in the spring to speak with us.
No, absolutely, Coach. Like I said, I was honored and really flattered that you invited to have me on. So I'm fired up.
Well, one of the reasons why we do this podcast is to get great guys like you who are true gentlemen off the field, but also fantastic coaches, and kind of diving into not so much the X's and O's, but diving into what you guys are about as coaches and what's made you who you are. So my first question is, from player to coach, you have risen the ranks in this extremely competitive career path that we call coaching. What has been your formula for success to kind of constantly be moving forward and having success at the location that you're at, but then having the opportunities to follow to get yourself where you're at today?
I don't think that it's any real secret, honestly, and it's cliche and a lot of people say it, but I think to advance in this profession and really anything, you got to do a great job at the job that you have and the job that you're at. So the old adage, be where your feet are, is something that I really try to do, because I think it's so easy, especially in today's day and age with social media and everything like this. Like, oh man, this guy got that job, this guy might get this job, to be thinking 2 steps, 3 steps ahead. I think it's really easy to compare also. Like, oh man, this guy's my age and he's already XYZ and I'm here. I think just being where your feet are and trying to do a great job at the job that you have. Because at the end of the day, what really sticks out is success and winning. So just trying to be great in kind of the 10 square feet that you're in that moment.
One thing that you said that kind of struck me is that comparison that we often do as coaches, where it's hard not to. We look at what other guys are doing. How did you navigate that? And what was like the self-talk that you were having to stay in the moment, to stay present with where your feet are at, and not trying to look at what the Joneses are doing with their career?
Yeah. I spent close to 8 years at Division III and NAI football. And I think it was always tempting for me to look like, oh man, this guy's my age and he's got this job at the FCS, or he just got this job at the FBS. And then, the older I've gotten, the more I've realized, man, this is really not about the job maybe the current job that you have, man. You have a long career. Mm-hmm. And just because you're not where you want to be, or maybe it's your end goal when you're, 30 years old, like, man, you can coach for another 30 years. And ultimately, again, kind of, it's something that's, I think, countercultural, but it's okay to, man, kind of be a slow, kind of be a crock pot coach, be a slow cook guy that does a great job at lower levels or at a smaller, in a smaller role. And then eventually when, you get your chance, all those experiences come to fruition, I guess, and help you do a great job at that job that you kind of dreamed of. So if that answers your question, but I think
it does. It does. And I'm going to get a t-shirt made that says Crockpot Coach on it. Because, I know, in all honesty, like, I think you look in this day and age, and it is so instantaneous where guys are trying to move up the ladder as quickly as they can. And it's harder and harder to find that guy who is willing to develop and kind of go through the protocols and go take it step by step. What has that afforded you now that you're in the NFL? What has that experience of trial and tribulation and time afforded you now? What perspective are you bringing in at this stage of your career?
Yeah, which I think it's been really cool. Again, I pride myself in being, man, I'm a small school guy. I played Division III football. I went back and coached at Wheaton College for 4 years, and then was at Indiana Wesleyan for 3 years. So 7 years at Division III and NAI levels. And so I think kind of having that mindset, almost like a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, but also like, hey man, like I'm a small school guy. There's no job too small for me to do. Whether it's making copies, whatever it is, erasing the whiteboards in the defensive staff room, like whatever it is, man, like I'll do it. And I think that kind of having that mindset not only lends itself to humility, but also it kind of also lends itself to just really wanting to work hard. But I think it's also been really cool for me, even though it's not nowhere near, our defensive coordinator, Matt Eberflus, has been a head coach in the NFL and just one of the most well-regarded defensive coordinators in football. It's been really cool. There's been times where it's been me and him in his office, and he'll say, well, you've been a coordinator. What did you do in this situation? And he's asked for my opinions and things like that. So being able to lean on some of those experiences, I wasn't a head coach of the Chicago Bears, defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts, but man, I spent time at, like I said, Austin P and UTEP, and go back to my days at Indiana Wesleyan and Wheaton. And I think you can glean and learn from so much of those experiences that can help you in like I said, in the current role that you have.
When I'm listening to coaches talk and give answers, I'm always looking for like those nuggets that strike a chord. And when you said humility, how important has your faith and the humility that you bring and the servant leadership that you bring to your profession been for you personally?
I think it's something that will set you apart, not only to your coworkers, but to your players. I think if, C.S. Lewis has a great quote. He says, humility isn't thinking less of yourself. It's just thinking of yourself less. And really, I think if you boil coaching down, like what I think, man, coaching is service. And how can you serve those around you? And and at this level, like Flu says, man, it's about serving your players to the point where maybe they're 2 inches closer to the ball. And that PBU, it turns into an interception. And at the end of the day, that might lead to, life-changing and generationally changing money attached to that. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, I think it's about service. And I think when you serve people and you do that well, that you're naturally going to stand out. And I think when you do that in an authentic way, that really connects with people's hearts. And something that Coach Schottenheimer said here in our first team meeting, he said, even though this is a transactional business, we can make it a transformational experience. And I think at the end of the day, like football, regardless of whatever level it is, and in college, especially now, but regardless of, there's some element of transaction. But at the end of the day, I think what draws us all to it is the fact that it can change people's hearts and truly is a transformational experience.
No question. I think when you get down to brass tacks, a lot of us continue to do that, because we're addicted to competition. And we need that, when we can't get out there. But then it's also that those day-to-day deposits that we all had somebody who transformed our lives and potentially a coach. And it's just the opportunity to do that again for another person. I think, when you confirmed that you were going to be able to do this, I was like, okay, like we're talking about the NFL, right? We're talking about the best of the best. How does that change your mindset coming in where, as a high school or collegiate coach, we're coaching the group and it's a collective unit trying to get better and better. But now the NFL it's like you said, it's generational wealth for some of these guys. It's a profession. How do you make that shift? What do you do different? I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm just curious to see how you are going to show up for that.
Yeah, I think it's something I tried to do at the college level to a degree, but I think especially at this level, it becomes more of a collaborative experience.
Okay.
And a collaborative partnership. And again, it becomes, I think for different players, there's different things that they need. And we've got guys, maybe they're 5, 6 years, 7-year vets. And the way you try to coach and coach them is going to be really fine tuned because, man, there's not too many run plays, too many pass plays, too many protections these guys haven't seen. So it's about, man, how do you hone the little things in their game that can take them to the next level. But there's also times where you're going to want feedback because, if a guy doesn't feel comfortable playing a certain technique or doing something a certain way, we're not going to try to force a round peg into a square hole, especially I think at this level. It's finding what guys can do well, what they're confident in, what they're comfortable with, and what they can do at a really high level.
From a philosophical standpoint, I like kind of getting back to what we talk about here is, the ideas behind what we do. Are there any personal non-negotiables that you've taken with you at all your stops where this is who I want to be as a coach, this is who I want to be as a professional, and this is who I want to be as a person and no matter what, I'm taking this with me. It's always going to be in my arsenal.
Yeah, I think it's really two things. The first one is I want to work incredibly hard. I don't want to be outworked in the building and in the country, in the league, whatever the case is. So I want to work extremely hard. All right. And the second thing is I want to love people well. I want to love people well, my players and the people that I work with. And again, it's I think sometimes that work can even it's in vogue now. I think throw it around in football, like, oh man, we love each other. That's great, but I like I think the Greek language has 3 or 4 words for love, and like the word agape means like action-based love is how I want to do that. And then the third thing, and I think kids, NFL players need it now more than ever, is consistency. I want to be the same person every single day, whether we got blown out by 50 points or whether we had a shutout and the opposing offense didn't cross the 50-yard line. Being the same guy every day and being consistent. Those 3 things are things that I really want to hang my hat on and something that I really want to make sure that I bring regardless of where I'm working or what team or job I have.
Coach, I mean, I so appreciate love people well. And I think that's one of the things that I initially recognized about you is that you're very authentic. You're a very authentic person. Where does this come from? I mean, going back to childhood, how did you develop this compassion and this vulnerability to bring to these guys? I'm always curious about that because we are a product of our environment in a lot of ways. And I'm always curious to hear about that.
Yeah, I'm super fortunate. I grew up in a coaching household. My dad, Mike Clark, is a longtime strength coach. He's now been in the NFL for close to 20 years and is the head of human performance with the Detroit Lions. So when I was growing up, he was the head strength and conditioning coach at Texas A&M. And I was really fortunate that our parents teach us things, tell us things, teach us things. But what my dad did incredibly well was he modeled what it means to be a servant leader, to be tender, but also to have a warrior spirit. So I was able to see that not only see him as a coach, because man, that dude, you see him on the weight room floor, back in the day and Needham Seed in College Station, Texas, he was getting after it. I mean, he's coaching these dudes hard. But to see that, but then also before workouts, after workouts, to watch him put his arm around guys and bring players over to our house and make genuine connection with people. That's something that maybe I took for granted a little bit. I think something he does exceptionally well and something that I always wanted to emulate and do. And then, I had it was my defensive coordinator at Eastlake High School in Seattle, Washington, Mammoth, Washington, on the east side of Seattle. His name's Don Bartell. And to this day, I don't know if I've been around a better football coach, a better culture implementer, culture driver. And that word authenticity, he's someone that, in my experience, is man, this guy is just so real. He's so authentic. And I was always drawn to that, just his core honesty. And so that's something that had a huge impact on me and something that I wanted to be for my players and those around me.
That's a great memory. Thank you for sharing that. I always, we take a little bit of the guys who impacted us, and I think they'd be very proud to see where you're at. Talking about your dad, do you talk ball with him quite a bit? Is he your trusted? Are you going to him if you need advice, or how does that work?
Yeah, 100%. And it's been, he's been a tremendous mentor, supporter. He's my biggest fan. He thinks I'm the best. He thinks I hung the moon in terms of football. If I ever have a question or I'm struggling with something, he's the guy I go to. A lot of calls and stuff this last year, a tough season at UTEP, and had other years in my career where it's like, man, like it's my sounding board. And, with his experience comes a lot of wisdom. So he's someone I definitely lean on. And we'll talk to a lot. Not so much here these last couple of weeks going into the draft.
Yeah, I figured as much. I was going to say
he's not prying for any information, but no, he's been a great sounding board in my coaching journey.
That's great. You talked about consistency and how important it is to be the same person daily with your players, and I think that's been my biggest thing that I've learned doing these interviews with people is the importance of being the horizon line for your players. I wasn't always like that. And, we all have our moments, but how do you approach that level of consistency when maybe things aren't going great? What's the self-talk and how do you keep yourself in check when, it's high stakes out there?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think in times, in really critical moments or in really tough failures, that's when players are looking at you.
Yeah.
That's when the eyes are really on you. And so I think knowing that, remembering that, and then sometimes you're the only in a world was like, man, we like this last season at UTEP, our home opener, we lose a heartbreaking game to Southern Utah, an FCS school, which is, not what you want to do in kind of your first year with the program. And, a couple bad breaks and we lose that football game. I go into that defensive meeting on Sunday, and it just, you could feel the kids are like, okay, like, what's this going to be like? Is this like, is all the stuff this guy said going out the window, or like, is he going to be who he says he is? And I think just understanding and realizing the power in those moments, that if you are consistent, if you do stick to your guns, so to speak, and you remain steadfast in the things that you said you're going to be about, then all of a sudden, what does that do? You gain credibility. It just increases that connection, I think, with your players, with your team, and with your whole unit.
It's those moments when trust is built, bottom line. Like, you're not building the trust when you're up by 3 scores, and the band's playing and everybody's got a smile on their face. And I think when you talk about showing up to work that day, and they're all waiting to see what's on the other side of a heartbreaker, that's so imperative that sometimes we let our ego get in the way and we want everybody to know that we're better than that, and we show up with maybe something less than our best. I think the fact that you put the kids first and put them first is why you're such a fantastic coach. Welcome to Culture Story, presented by Story of the Season, a special segment inside our CultureOS podcast. Today, I'm joined by Coach Reed Heim, head coach at Geyer High School in Texas. Geyer is one of the premier programs in the country, and Coach Heim has made it a priority to tell his story the right way. This past season, Geyer raised over $20,000 through the Story of the Season, not just to raise funds, but to elevate their players and connect with their community. Coach, it's really great to have you on.
Thanks, Rob, for having me. I appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. With CultureOS, we really talk about the mission, vision, and purpose of why we as coaches get involved into this business, into this passion. You're leading a nationally known program. What are the core principles or maybe some systems you've leaned on to keep your culture consistent and player focused?
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm very blessed to have a coaching staff that understands what we're trying to get done here. Fortunately, in the state of Texas, every single of our assistant coaches is in the building. They're with us in both athletic periods. That's really, to me, leaning on those guys. We have a core set of values. Like for me, they're courage, process-driven mentality, accountability, consistency, and selflessness. And that's something that after that season, it was really me asking what are the things that are most important to me and why I love what I do. And I think our coaches have done a good job and run with that. And there's a piece of me in this, and then there's a piece of the history. And I think both of those together have allowed us to continue being successful, and we hope to have a great year again this year.
Well, I appreciate that answer. And I think it takes, when you take over a program who's had past success and you have to influence it with your personal mission, vision, and purpose. I think that can be a real challenge, and you've done such a great job of that. We talk about Friday nights being a community event. When you think about culture, how is it important to extend what you're doing in the building beyond football to get it to the parents, the fans, the alumni, the entire community? How do you guys reach out to them?
We do it a couple different ways. I actually have Coach Norris is one of our offensive line coaches. And I've given every one of my coaches kind of a name or part of their job description. So he's our cultural liaison.
Nice.
And so what he does, or our community liaison, and what he does is he's the guy that anytime I get requests for, hey, can you send some guys out, or we're having a fair day or a field day, can you get some of your guys out there? And he does a great job. We try to do we have spring footballs. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a great night where we invited our youth team that they're also called the Wildcats. Like, it's within a couple of the community. There's another community league that we had. We invited both of our junior highs to have a 7-on-7 game in between the sub-varsity and the varsity. So any opportunity that we have to create a good atmosphere, synergy in between our feeder pattern and our youth league, all of those different ways, just to stay connected. And because many of our players, they came up doing all of those same things. They were little Wildcats, they were Crown Over Cowboys, or they were Harpool Longhorns, and then they became Geyer Wildcats. We also have a little Wildcat where we pair up our student athletes, generally it's juniors and seniors, with anywhere from first grade all the way up to sixth grade, so that we do some different things that way. Our booster club does a great job with that.
Coach, one of the things I know you did this year, and we were talking prior to this, was you did Story of the Season. You raised over $20,000 through that platform. How did that process unfold for you going into this year?
Chris reached out last year, and it's one of those ways that we're trying to connect our community to the school and all the different ways. And we have a traditional, like we always had, a media guide, that was available during the season. I think with the cost of printing going up, it's hard sometimes to update it throughout the season. Say your roster changes, or the teams that you're playing, they don't get you the information quickly enough to get it into a media guide for that particular game or a game program. So it was really a natural fit for us to use Story of the Season to make it, a digital platform that also offered you some of the same paper-based abilities too. And so to me, if you can do both, we're trying to hit everybody at every angle. And those people who feel like they want to support our program through their advertising, the typical, that's always how we've done it. You've got a media guide or a program, you purchase an ad. Well, we wanted to create the ability for those people to connect with the advertisers. And I think that Story of the Season does that. So for us, it's a very natural fit. It allows us to have that legacy paper product if we so choose to do it, combined with, the digital age. And so far, it's been really good. Any of the coaches that have called and asked me about it, I tell them it's a no-brainer. Just in this day and age, what a way to be able to click on an ad and it take you right to their website. And then at any time, be able to see what's going on in all the different levels of our program.
I love the way that you put it, that hybrid, that crossroads of legacy paper and then the digital age. I think that's a really great way of describing this particular platform, Story of the Season. You had over 500 weekly viewers following your Story of the Season coverage. How did this help, in your mind, promote your program and give people maybe a deeper look as to what Geyer football is all about?
Well, at the varsity level, we get great coverage. We're in Denton, Texas, which is just north of Dallas and Fort Worth. And so we get lots of good coverage through just general media when you're successful. I think our area does a pretty good job of coverage. But one of the things that they don't cover very well is sub-varsity. So say junior varsity, freshman teams. And what I loved about Story of the Season was that it allowed us to tell the story and show, week in, week out, who's playing well at the sub-varsity level, all the different things that are going there. So to me, that was the biggest benefit, that, hey, the family could come and watch us on Friday night, but when they get there, they can celebrate the success at the different levels, not just what everybody sees on Friday night. I thought that was fantastic.
That's what I enjoy about the platform as well, is it does give every level that spotlight and not just the big time Friday night football. And I think that's important because, kids want to feel special. Parents want to see their kids highlighted. Speaking of parents and boosters, what kind of role did your booster club and parents play in making Story of the Season happen from ad sales to content, any other type of support?
Our booster club, last year, Jeremy Schneider, and this year, Ryan Garcia, both businessmen in their own right. So they thought it was not a difficult platform to get the advertising, the information out to the potential advertisers. I think they did a really good job of using their connections in the community. I just love any opportunity that you can go out there and, fundraise, but not do it in a way that feels like you're always got your hand out. And what I love about Story of the Season is that you can actually, as an advertiser, know how many eyeballs are on these ads that I am paying for. And in a traditional paper media guide, you really don't have any idea. But now with Story of the Season, you can see exactly how many people are opening this up. You can track that, how many eyes are on it. I think it's a way for us to stay connected to community and work hand in hand.
Head football coach, we have so many different hats that we're wearing, and media and marketing is one of them. You have to be able to market your program and get quantifiable data on how the marketing is going. That's what I really love about what Story of the Season does. How has the feedback from the community been, and are they enjoying the digital content that you guys are providing?
I believe that they are. We've gotten a lot of good feedback. Really good feedback from the families that say, hey, we enjoy reading this, or man, I was fired up because my son was the special teams player of the week. We got to see his video on there. I think there's just so many ways that it gives access and a look into our program other than, hey, all the big dogs on Friday night, final score, all that. Like, you really get to dive into the program and see the different aspects of it. And that feedback is coming from our parents. It's coming from the cheerleaders who, they pay for spots. It's coming from our sub-varsity coaches, our band, all the different ways that we connect through that. I think it's been great so far.
Coach Heim, I appreciate the time and the example you're setting over at Geyer High School. You do such an amazing job. What you've done shows that even at the highest level, culture still comes down to connection, clarity, and celebration. I've used Story of the Season myself, and what makes it powerful is how it helps us as coaches, tell the story for that group of kids, which is, to me, the whole job we have, aside from winning games, is creating this moment for them that will hopefully be something that they look on when they're older like us. So thanks for your time today, Coach.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. Good luck this year.
You as well. One of the questions I always have for guys who have coordinated at multiple places is, how do you take your personal philosophies and meld them into the program's philosophies? And like now at your new destination with the Dallas Cowboys, such a storied program, how do you take your personal philosophies and kind of fit them into the Cowboy way?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. And the cool thing, coming here just with this defensive staff, there's a lot of things that, I tried to really stress and implement in some of the defensive units that I've coordinated in the past. And it's like, man, these guys are doing a lot of those same things. And in some ways, man, they're doing it at a whole nother level. And so that's been really cool to kind of come alongside and try to, help implement that. But I think, again, it's similar to some of the things that we talked about earlier. You got to have a couple non-negotiables, I think. And a lot of times it's not, I've got to be a 4-2, 4-2-5 or a 3, odd front guy, tight front, whatever the case is. A lot of times it's play style. It's play style, the way we want to play the game, the way we want to prepare, and the way that we want to interact. So those three things, I think, can really translate to really any program. Again, man, like the play style, the way we want to play, how we want to prepare, and how we want to interact, how we want to treat one another. I think those three things, like I said, I think that those can fit in just about any program, and really a lot of times in any organization.
When you're transitioning into your new role, what is your process for learning about the program? Are you interviewing people? Are you a fly on the wall? Are you asking a lot of questions? I think sometimes people will come into a position and they don't learn enough about the history. How's that been for you? And what have you done to kind of, put yourself in a position of fully understanding what the Cowboys' expectations are of you guys?
Yeah, I think, again, it starts with kind of having that posture of humility.
Okay.
Coming in and really assuming like, hey, I don't know. And then being eager to learn and willing to learn. And I do think as much information as you can get on the front end, whether that's through the interview process or research on your own, things like that, I think that's always really, really helpful. But then I also think, especially whenever you're in a new role, maybe with a new staff, whatever the case is, just being slow to speak, and make sure that when you do speak that you're measured and your words matter. You're selective and those words are meaningful and impactful.
I'm laughing because we've all been in that meeting with the guy who's just giving you a word salad of buzzwords and everything else. So I think when you talk about being slow to speak and being measured, it's a lost art form. And I think it's a great takeaway for people who are, kind of building themselves up into a program or making a transition into another program. You've talked about, your journey along your stops. Has there been anything that's any aha moments for you as a coach? This could be X's and O's or even just philosophical that you saw another coach do and you said, I love that. I want to be like that. I'm taking that with me.
Yeah, I think there's been some moments like that really at every single stop I've ever had. Shoot, I'll go back to my first coaching job at Humboldt State. Eric Tripp was the offensive coordinator. I was coaching running backs. And as a first-year coach, trying to work hard and do well, patience and grace, I try to take from him because that dude, man, patience with me and John Hughes, one of my closest friends. We've been texting a bunch today. He's the offensive line co-offensive coordinator at Idaho State. We shared an office, and that dude had to be patient with us because I know we were screwing up a bunch of stuff and a bunch of squirrely young coaches. So I took grace and patience from him at the University of Akron, where I GA'd for Chuck Amato. Two things, man, I took from Chuck was that demeanor and play style on defense. What it means to what really is the essence of defense, man. Running, getting off of blocks and hitting and having that mindset, and the fact that, man, we might play the same game as an offense. We might play the same sport, but it's a different game on this side. I go back to Wheaton College and I get the coach for the guy that I played for, Mike Swider, who I think is one of the best culture implementers in the game of football at any level. What it means to hold fast to fundamental truths and really stand on those and embed those within a program. And then, I had a unique experience. I got to work for my best friend, Jordan Langs, who's the head coach at Indiana West. And from him, I took the idea of vision and confidence. And it was so cool because Jordan talked about, man, we're going to be a top 5 program in the country. And he said that before I even took the job. And I'm like, dude, you guys don't have a stadium yet. Barely have any players. What the heck? He said that in 2019 when we were, an average MFSA team. And then sure enough, he had a vision. He had confidence in the process to achieve that vision. And sure enough, in 2021, we win the MFSA East, and we're a top 5 team in the country, just like he said. So kind of the vision and the confidence. And then from there to Austin Peay and UTEP with Scotty Walden, and from him, take his relentless energy and the fact that, again, that guy, regardless of in season, out of season, off season, whether it's a special teams meeting, talking to boosters, he is going to bring juice and energy, and he's going to infect everybody around him. So, and that's just a short list right there, Coach. But I mean, those are things every single stop. It's like, man, I want you take that and you want to kind of harness that and implement that and do it in your own way, in a way that's authentic, but something that certainly left its mark on me at all those different stops.
I just think it's one of those full circle moments from the earlier on in our conversation, talking about, having that journey that you go on. And like you talk about taking away, the play style from Akron, and then how defense is a different sport, and then going through the vision and confidence. And then obviously with Coach Walden, like that juice that he is just off the charts. But I think it's those steps and those things that we take in a journey that make us the coach. And sometimes if you don't get that journey and you get the prize too soon, you miss out on a lot of personal development. I think sometimes you see guys who are in a position where they don't really know who they are and they haven't had that experience. And now all of a sudden they're not sure because they just haven't had that experience that you need to kind of pull from different people. So I love that. I'm going to clean that up and put those in the show notes when we're done, because I think that was fantastic. Thank you, Coach. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what's the end game for you, Coach?
That's something my wife asks me, a couple times a year.
Yours too?
I don't necessarily have, a goal. Like, man, I want to be the head coach at, this place, or I want to be the defensive coordinator here. And I think kind of not having an end goal. And I know some guys have it. That's fine. But I think not having kind of that end goal, like, man, I have to be this, or I have to do that. I think it sometimes can be rigid and it can restrict you. For me, I have really enjoyed the NFL level. I'd love to continue to coach at this level. Shoot, someday I would love to coordinate and call plays again. But again, does that mean I'm like, oh no, I'll never go back to college? I don't know that yet. I've been here for 2 months. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've got limited perspective right now. It's hard for me to say, especially right now, kind of in this juncture. But I know the end goal is to continue to learn, and that's something that's been really cool and something that I'm proud of for making this jump is, I think, you're in the game, for 12 plus years that I've been in. I get that job. I get to be the defensive coordinator at UTEP. I think it'd been very easy to say, oh man, I'm a coordinator. I want to continue to kind of ride this out and be the shot caller and be the guy in that head defensive chair. But I guess I'll say this, I'm really proud of myself for having the humility to step back and go, you know what, I'm gonna go in at essentially kind of a significantly smaller role in a bigger organization and be challenged and be stretched and be forced to grow and learn and adapt. Again, I can't tell you exactly what the end goal is, but again, I want to continue to progress. I want to continue to learn, and I want to continue to hopefully impact people in a positive way, coaches and players, those guys that I'm around.
Fantastic. I think, when you talk about being proud of yourself, you don't hear people talk about themselves like that a lot of times. And I think in the coaching profession, it's okay to be proud of yourself because it's a hard job. Anytime you take a leadership role, you're putting yourself out there and you're moving into a new opportunity that's different, and you're challenging yourself. There's uncomfortable moments. And I think looking back and reflecting and sometimes just saying, listen, man, I'm proud of the fact that I took that leap of faith, not knowing what the future held. And that's the end game sometimes, right? Like, isn't that sometimes the end game is just doing right by yourself and, trying to make the best out of your situation? I love that answer that you gave. I really do. And you alluded to your wife. How do you make, I think as coaches, we know that there's really no balance, right? We do our best, but how do you make it all work? A family, profession, what are some of the things that work for you guys?
Man, I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. My wife is an absolute rock star, superstar, unicorn, just in terms of her ability to hold down our household. We got 3 boys, 6 years old, 3 years old, 1 year old, and it would be chaos, but she is an absolute rock star. So I'm really, really fortunate to be blessed with a tremendous wife and a tremendous mother of our kids. I think trying to be really intentional with my time when I do have time with my kids, and it's something, again, I still struggle with. And it's like, man, all right, like when I was back at UTEP or Austin Peay, it's like, okay, I'm at home, I've got maybe an hour and a half, maybe with these kids before it's time to go to bed. Well, I'm going to take my phone, I'm going to go put it on the counter, man. Like, I'll send these texts, call these recruits, do whatever it is after these kids go to bed. And my wife would tell you this too. I was not perfect in that. Just trying to find ways to be really intentional and spend meaningful, because your quantity of time isn't going to be huge in this profession. That's just the fact. But spending meaningful time and then being intentional with the time you do have. Man, maybe you've got a weekend or you got a week off. Like, okay, how are we going to utilize this time to the max for make it meaningful and hopefully memorable for your kids and for your wife as well.
When you talk about the quantity of time, it's never enough and it goes fast. But that intentionality is something that's completely within our control, and it's like to the point of like, even on my phone, I'll put like kids time on my calendar, just because it's like, I live by my calendar daily, and it's important to like have those reminders that like this time is dedicated to the family. How have the kids responded for dad going into the NFL? I know the 1-year-old probably won't remember it, but how about the 6-year-old?
The 1-year-old won't know. The 6-year-old was pretty excited. He was a little confused that he's like, Daddy's going to be playing against Grandpa now? Like, what?
Yes.
He was a little confused, but he was definitely really excited. And my 3-year-old, man, he loves all things football. So he talks like, I don't know where he picks this up, but he talks, says, my players are over in the kitchen. I gotta go get my players. He'll shut his bedroom door, and he's like, I gotta go talk to my players and give them pep talks. I don't know where he gets it from, but he was fired up. He was fired up to see Dad with the Cowboys.
Are they gym rats? Are they tagging along quite a bit when they can?
Yeah, certainly so. And like at UTEP, my oldest son is middle son, Coach Walton, his oldest son is right in between them. So those guys were absolutely thick as thieves. You would have thought, they ran UTEP athletics the way they were running around that facility and running around that field, which is awesome because those are, my best memories as a kid.
Yes.
Was doing the same thing. So
yes,
I absolutely love it. But
that's fantastic, man. That's going to be memories for a lifetime for those two.
Without a doubt.
All right, I got 2 questions left, and Coach, and I cannot thank you enough, Coach Clark, for being with us today. I ask everybody this: what is harder, building success or sustaining it? And why do you think your answer is correct?
I I think sustaining success. I think Abraham Lincoln said this, but if you want to ruin a man, don't give him failure, give him success. Just because, again, especially in today's day and age, when you have success, everybody tells you how great you are, and you're going to see your highlights all over X and Instagram, whatever the case is, and it can be really easy to listen to those outside voices. So, I am pretty good and all these things. And all of a sudden you forget about kind of the foundation and the work and the humility that it took to get to the point where you forget about all the things that led to that success. So fighting that complacency, I think is just really, because complacency is just human nature. And so fighting that, I think sustaining it is always harder.
What would you give any advice to aspiring coaches who might be listening in on this right now? Doesn't matter what level. What's one piece that they can take away?
Man, I think, again, it goes back to simple things. And we had a saying at UTEP and at Austin P, if it's simple, it's critical. So simple things that I think are critical: show up, work really, really hard, and be where your feet are at. And if you do those three things and you do them really, really well, and you put your all into your work, good things are going to happen.
Coach, simple is critical. What a great way to send off here, because it is. If you can't do the simple, you can't do the hard, right? Coach JJ Clark of the Dallas Cowboys, I cannot thank you enough for spending time with us. You gave us so many great nuggets here. Appreciate your time. I wish you the best of luck, and thanks for spending time with us today on CultureOS.
No, Coach, again, thank you so much. I appreciate you having me. It was an absolute honor, and I'm flattered you chose to have me on.
Dude, it was my pleasure. Thanks for doing this. Story of the Season helps high school football teams get media coverage like the pros, raise money, and memorialize their season. Each week, they design a digital magazine that recaps each game with photos, videos, interviews, write-ups, and highlights. At the end of the season, all chapters are combined into a comprehensive printed yearbook. It's the ultimate keepsake and a senior gift. Teams can raise tens of thousands of dollars by giving sponsors unmatched value with interactive ad space and unlimited viewership. It's time to try something new this season. Visit storyoftheseason.com to share your story. Tired of dealing with your boring print media guide that gets trampled on and forgotten about after the first game of the season? Story of the Season is changing the media game with their 3-in-1 weekly digital program, lucrative fundraising, and end-of-season printed yearbook. Give your program media coverage like the pros this season and raise money. Story of the Season offers the best of both worlds with digital weekly media guides and a printed end-of-the-season yearbook. Teams raise an average of $10,000 by selling interactive ad space in their digital media guide. Ditch your old school media guide and go with Story of the Season hybrid print digital platform. Learn more at storyoftheseason.com.